What if I told you that the smell of rotting milk would lead police to uncover one of the most chilling cases of domestic violence and murder? What if I told you that a missing mother's ex-husband would bury her body while their young son watched? And what if I told you that it would take a hand-drawn map from a jail cell to finally bring justice to a woman who fled war, only to be killed by the man she once loved? This is the story of Roa Aldanoon, a 24-year-old Iraqi refugee who escaped violence in her homeland, only to face an even deadlier threat in her own apartment. Before we dive into this heartbreaking case, if stories like Roa's matter to you, if you believe every victim deserves justice, hit that subscribe button. Because cases like this need to be told, and your support helps us continue sharing these important stories. October 19th, 2016. Lakewood, Ohio. 3 p.m. Detective Sarah Martinez pulled up to the Northeast Garden Apartments, expecting another routine welfare check. 3 days. That's how long 24-year-old Roa Aldanoon had been missing from her job at the Aladdin restaurant. Her coworkers were worried, but missing person cases like this usually ended with someone finding the missing person at a friend's house or on an impromptu trip. But as Detective Martinez approached Apartment 2B, something felt different. The air itself seemed to carry a warning. "Hello? Police. We're here for a welfare check," she called out, knocking firmly on the door. Silence. Then she smelled it. A sharp, sour odor that made her stomach turn. It was faint at first, but unmistakable. Detective Martinez had been on the force for 12 years. She knew that smell. "Something's not right here," she muttered to her partner, Detective James Wright, who had just arrived. They knocked again. "Roa? Are you in there?" "We're with the Lakewood Police Department." Still nothing. The smell was getting stronger. It was seeping through the door frame, mixing with the hallway air like a toxic fog. Detective Wright covered his nose with his sleeve. "We need to get inside," Martinez said, "but we need to do this by the book." They couldn't just bust down the door. Not yet. Not without proper cause. Even with the smell, even with the 3 days of silence, they had to follow protocol. So they called building maintenance and asked for the spare key. While they waited, Detective Martinez decided to canvass the neighbors. Maybe someone had seen something. Maybe someone had answers. She knocked on the door across the hall. "Excuse me, sir. I'm Detective Martinez with Lakewood Police. Have you seen your neighbor, Roa, recently?" The neighbor, a middle-aged man in his 50s, shook his head. "No, not today. Haven't seen her in a couple of days, actually." "How often do you usually see her?" "Maybe once or twice a week. She's quiet, keeps to herself. Nice lady, though. Always polite when we pass in the hallway." Detective Martinez nodded, but her mind was racing. The smell was still there, still drifting from Apartment 2B. And now she noticed something else. Roa's car wasn't in the parking garage. "Sir, do you know what kind of car Roa drives?" "Yeah, a blue Honda Civic. I've seen her come and go with it." But when they checked the garage, the Honda was nowhere to be found. This was getting more complicated by the minute. 20 minutes later, building maintenance arrived with the key. Detective Martinez's hand trembled slightly as she inserted it into the lock. She'd been on hundreds of welfare checks, but something about this one felt different. The smell was stronger now, almost overwhelming. "Lakewood Police. Anyone home?" The door swung open, and Detective Martinez stepped inside. The apartment was dark, curtains drawn tight. She flipped on the lights and immediately saw the chaos. The living room looked like a tornado had torn through it. Furniture was overturned, papers scattered everywhere. But it was the kitchen that stopped her cold. There on the counter sat a jug of milk. Spoiled. Rotten. The source of that horrible smell. Next to it was a glass, half filled with what had once been milk, but was now a chunky, yellowish mess. On the stove, a pan of chicken sat completely dried out, as if it had been cooking for days. "Looks like someone left in the middle of dinner," Detective Wright observed. But Detective Martinez was already moving toward the bedrooms. Roa's bedroom was in complete disarray. Clothes were thrown everywhere, dresser drawers pulled out, personal items scattered across the floor. It looked like someone had been searching for something, or like there had been a struggle. But when she looked into the child's room, her heart sank. There on the bed was a small suitcase.
Packed.
Ready to go. Children's clothes were neatly folded inside. "James, look at this," she called out. Detective Wright joined her in the doorway. It looks like she was planning to leave. But why would she pack her son's things and then just disappear? That's when it hit Detective Martinez. Where was the child? Where was Roa's son? Neither Roa nor her 4-year-old son was anywhere in the apartment. But the scene told a story of interruption, of plans suddenly changed, of a life suspended in the middle of an ordinary evening. Detective Martinez pulled out her notebook. 3 days missing. No contact with work.
Car gone. Child gone.
Apartment in chaos. Dinner abandoned. Bags packed but never taken. This wasn't just a missing person case anymore. This was something much worse. As they processed the scene, Detective Martinez couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. The smell of spoiled milk would haunt her for weeks, but it would be nothing compared to what they were about to discover. The investigation into Roa Aldanone's disappearance was just beginning, and it would lead them down a path of lies, betrayal, and ultimately, to one of the most disturbing cases of domestic violence the Lakewood Police Department had ever seen. But first, they needed to understand who Roa was and why someone might want her to disappear. To understand what happened to Roa Aldanone, you have to understand where she came from and what she was running from. Roa had arrived in the United States in 2014 as a refugee from Iraq. She wasn't alone. She came with her husband, Fahad Mohammed Sahid, fleeing a country torn apart by war and violence. They were seeking safety, a new life, a chance to build something better. At first, everything seemed promising. They settled in California, then moved to the Cleveland area. Both were working on getting their residency status. Roa was learning English, adapting to American culture, trying to build a foundation for her future. But even in America, even thousands of miles from the war they'd escaped, violence found its way into Roa's life. Her marriage to Fahad began to crumble. What started as small arguments became bigger fights. What started as controlling behavior became something darker. By 2016, Roa had made the difficult decision to leave her husband. The divorce was finalized in September 2016, just 1 month before she would disappear. Roa was granted full custody of their young son, and the court had issued a protection order against Fahad. He was legally prohibited from being near Roa or their child. But legal documents don't stop obsession. They don't stop a man who believes he owns his ex-wife. After the divorce, Roa threw herself into building a new life. She worked at the Aladdin restaurant in Lakewood, a Middle Eastern restaurant where she felt comfortable, where she could speak Arabic with her coworkers, where she could earn money to support herself and her son. Her coworkers remember her as quiet but hardworking. She was always punctual, always reliable. She kept to herself mostly, but she was kind to everyone. She was rebuilding her life one day at a time. That's why, when Roa didn't show up for work on October 17, 2016, her coworkers immediately knew something was wrong. "Roa never missed work," said Fatima, one of her colleagues. Never. She was always here, always on time. When she didn't show up, we started calling her phone. No answer. By the second day, the worry was spreading through the restaurant. By the third day, they called the police. Detective Martinez returned to the Aladdin restaurant on October 20th, the day after discovering Roa's chaotic apartment. She needed to understand Roa's life, her relationships, her routines. She needed to find out who might have wanted to hurt her. The restaurant was small, family-owned, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Detective Martinez sat down with several of Roa's coworkers, mostly women who had become like sisters to her. "Tell me about Roa," Detective Martinez said. "What was she like? Was she worried about anything? Was anyone bothering her?" The women exchanged glances. There was something they weren't saying. She was scared, Fatima finally admitted. Scared of her ex-husband. Even after the divorce, even with the restraining order, he wouldn't leave her alone. "What do you mean?" "He would show up here sometimes. Not inside, but outside. Watching. Waiting. She would see him in the parking lot, and she would panic. She would ask one of us to walk her to her car. Detective Martinez took notes furiously. This was important. This was motive. Did she ever tell you about specific threats? Did he ever try to hurt her? Not physically, said another coworker, Amira. But he would call her, text her, tell her that she belonged to him, that she couldn't just leave. He said the American courts had no right to keep him from his wife. Ex-wife, Fatima corrected. But he never saw it that way. Detective Martinez was building a picture of a woman living in fear, looking over her shoulder, trying to start a new life while her past stalked her. Tell me about her other relationships, she said. Did she have any close friends? Anyone she confided in? That's when they mentioned Hamza. Hamza Ball, Amira said. He was her friend. They would talk sometimes. He works at another restaurant, but he would come by here sometimes to see her. What kind of relationship did they have? The women exchanged glances again. Just friends, Fatima said, but there was something in her voice that suggested it might be more complicated than that. He was nice to her, Amira added. He made her laugh. She hadn't laughed much since the divorce. Detective Martinez felt her pulse quicken. A male friend. Someone who might have been more than a friend. Someone who might have been the last person to see Roa alive. Do you have his contact information? They did. And when Detective Martinez called Hamza Ball, he agreed to come to the station immediately. 3 days later, on October 22, 2016, Detective Martinez sat across from Hamza Ball in interview room 2. He was 22 years old, well-dressed, articulate. He seemed genuinely concerned about Roa's disappearance. I'm worried about her, he said. This isn't like her. She would never just disappear without telling someone. Tell me about your relationship with Roa, Detective Martinez said. We were friends. Good friends. I met her through a mutual friend who owns a restaurant. We would talk sometimes, hang out. She was going through a hard time with her divorce. When was the last time you saw her? Hamza's answer would change everything. Sunday night, October 16th. I went to her apartment. We talked, smoked hookah, just hung out. But he paused, looking uncomfortable. But what? Something happened that night. Something that scared her. Detective Martinez leaned forward. What do you mean? Her ex-husband, Fahad. He was there, outside her apartment, watching. And just like that, the investigation had its first real lead. The last person to see Roa alive wasn't just a friend. He was a witness to her worst fear becoming reality. But as Detective Martinez would soon discover, the truth about that night was even more complicated than she could have imagined. October 16th, 2016. 6:30 p.m. Hamza Ball knocked softly on Roa's apartment door. They had plans to hang out, maybe smoke some hookah, just relax after a long week. But when Roa opened the door, Hamza could immediately see the stress in her eyes. Are you okay? He asked as he stepped inside. I'm fine, Roa said, but she wasn't fine. She kept glancing toward the window, toward the door, like she was expecting someone. They sat in the living room, the hookah between them on the coffee table. Hamza tried to make conversation, tried to get Roa to relax, but she was distracted. Every few minutes, she would get up and peek through the blinds. Roa, what's going on? Hamza finally asked. You're acting strange. It's nothing, she said, but her voice was tight with anxiety. I have this feeling that someone's watching me. Hamza knew about her ex-husband. He knew about the restraining order, about the divorce, about the custody battle. But he'd never seen Roa this scared before. Around 6:45 p.m., Hamza decided it was time to leave. He could see that Roa wasn't going to be able to relax, and his presence might even be making things worse. I should go, he said, standing up. Wait, Roa said, jumping up from the couch. Let me check first. Check what? The hallway. Sometimes he comes here. He stands in the hallway and just watches my door. Hamza felt a chill run down his spine. Are you serious? Roa nodded and walked to the door. She looked through the peephole, and her entire body tensed. Oh my God, she whispered. What? What is it? He's there. He's in the hallway. Hamza joined her at the door and looked through the peephole. Sure enough, there was a man standing in the hallway, just standing there, staring at Roa's door. How long has he been there? Hamza asked. I don't know. Maybe the whole time you've been here. The implications were terrifying. Had Fahad been watching them? Had he seen Hamza enter the apartment? How long had he been stalking his ex-wife? I'm calling the police, Hamza said. No, Roa said quickly. Please don't. It will just make things worse. Roa, this is insane. He's violating the restraining order. He could go to jail. You don't understand, Roa said, her voice breaking. In our community, if people find out that I had a man in my apartment, if they find out that where? She didn't finish the sentence, but Hamza understood. The stigma, the judgment, the damage to her reputation in the tight-knit Arab community. It could destroy her. So, what do we do? He asked. There's a back exit. You can leave through there. Hamza looked at her with disbelief. Are you kidding me? I'm not leaving you alone with him out there. Please, Roa begged. It's better this way. He'll see that you're gone, and maybe he'll leave too. Against his better judgment, Hamza agreed. He gathered his things and headed toward the back exit. But as he was leaving, he turned back to Roa. Are you sure you're going to be okay? I'll be fine, she said, but they both knew she wasn't fine. Nothing about this situation was fine. That was the last time Hamza Bal saw Roa Aldanoon alive. 3 days later, when Detective Martinez interviewed Hamza, she could see the guilt in his eyes. He blamed himself for leaving her alone that night. He blamed himself for not calling the police, for not doing more to protect her. I should have stayed, he told Detective Martinez. I should have called 911. I should have done something. But Detective Martinez wasn't interested in his regrets. She was interested in facts. And the facts were leading her straight to Fahad Mohammed Sahid. Can you describe the man you saw in the hallway? Medium height, dark hair, wearing a jacket. I couldn't see his face clearly, but Roa said it was her ex-husband. Did you see him leave?
No.
I left through the back exit, remember? I have no idea how long he stayed there. Detective Martinez made notes. A clear violation of the restraining order. A pattern of stalking behavior. And now, a potential witness who placed Fahad at the scene on the night Roa disappeared. It was time to bring Fahad in for questioning. On October 25, 2016, Detective Martinez and her partner arrived at Fahad's workplace with an arrest warrant. He was working in a warehouse, operating a forklift, when they found him. Fahad Mohammed Sahid? Detective Martinez called out. He turned around, and for a moment his face was blank. No surprise, no fear, no panic. Just nothing. Yes, that's me, he said in accented English. We have a warrant for your arrest. You're being charged with violating a temporary protection order. Fahad nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting this. He didn't resist. He didn't ask questions. He just put down his tools and held out his hands for the handcuffs. At the station, Detective Martinez read Fahad his rights and began the interview. She needed to understand what had happened on October 16th. She needed to know where Roa was. I want to talk to you about your ex-wife, Roa, she began. She's not my ex-wife, Fahad said firmly. She's my wife. We are married in the eyes of God. You're divorced. The papers were finalized in September. American papers mean nothing. We were married in Iraq. In Islam. That marriage cannot be undone by American courts. Detective Martinez felt her stomach turn. This was exactly the kind of thinking that led to domestic violence, to stalking, to murder. Fahad, you were seen outside Roa's apartment on Sunday night, October 16th. You were violating the restraining order. I was not violating anything. I was checking on my wife and my son. When was the last time you saw Roa? Fahad's answer was calm, matter-of-fact, and completely different from what Hamza had told them. She came to my house on Sunday night. She brought our son. She wanted to reconcile. Detective Martinez felt her pulse quicken. What do you mean, reconcile? She realized she made a mistake. She realized she belonged with her husband. She came to my house and we talked. She said she wanted to try again. What time was this? Around 11 p.m. After the other man left her apartment. So he had been watching. He had seen Hamza leave. He knew about their friendship. What happened after she came to your house? We talked. We spent time together. She stayed the night. But in the morning, she said she had to go somewhere. She said she was going to Detroit, to a party. She said she would be back the next day to pick up our son. But she never came back.
No.
I tried calling her. I sent messages. Nothing. Detective Martinez studied Fahad's face. He was either telling the truth, or he was the most skilled liar she'd ever encountered. Fahad, Roa is missing. She hasn't been to work in 3 days. Her apartment looks like it was ransacked.
Her car is gone.
Do you know where she is? No, he said simply. I am worried about her too. That's why I was happy when you came to arrest me. I thought maybe you found her. The interview continued for hours, but Fahad's story never changed. Roa came to his house willingly. They reconciled. She left to go to Detroit. She never came back. But Detective Martinez wasn't buying it. There were too many inconsistencies, too many red flags. And there was something else bothering her about the case. Back at Roa's apartment, during a second, more thorough search, Detective Martinez found something the first team had missed. The hookah that Hamza said they'd been smoking was broken. Pieces were missing. The hose was gone. When she confronted Hamza about this, he seemed genuinely confused. I don't understand, he said. It was working fine when we were using it. The hose was there. Can you describe the hookah to me? It was a 2-piece, with a metal stem and a hose. Pretty standard. The hose is missing, Hamza, and there are pieces in the trash. Hamza looked genuinely puzzled. I don't know what to tell you. It was working when I was there. Detective Martinez decided to give Hamza a polygraph test. If he was lying about anything, she needed to know. The results came back clear. Hamza was telling the truth. He had been at Roa's apartment on October 16th. They had smoked hookah. He had left when he saw Fahad in the hallway. He had nothing to do with her disappearance. But if Hamza wasn't lying, then what had happened to the hookah? And more importantly, what had happened to Roa after Hamza left? Detective Martinez was about to find out that the answer would lead her to a third person, someone who had been hiding in the shadows of this case from the very beginning. With Hamza cleared by the polygraph, Detective Martinez turned her full attention back to Fahad. But the deeper she dug, the more complicated the case became. During a more detailed interview, Fahad stuck to his story. Roa had come to his house willingly on October 16th. They had reconciled. She had left the next morning to go to Detroit for a party, planning to return the following day. She never came back, Fahad repeated. I was worried. I tried calling her many times. Fahad, you do understand that you're admitting to violating the protection order, right? Even if Roa came to your house willingly, you're not supposed to have contact with her. She is my wife, he said again. The mother of my child. If she comes to me, I will not turn her away. Detective Martinez was frustrated. Fahad's story was consistent, but it didn't make sense. Why would Roa, who was terrified of her ex-husband, willingly go to his house for a reconciliation? Why would she leave her son with someone she feared? Tell me about your relationship with Roa, Detective Martinez said. Before the divorce. What was it like? Fahad's demeanor shifted slightly. We were happy. We came to America together. We were building a life. Then why did she leave you? She was influenced by bad people. People who told her that American women don't have to obey their husbands. She forgot our culture, our traditions. Did you ever hurt her, Fahad? I never hit her. I never raised a hand to her. But you controlled her. A husband has responsibilities. A wife has responsibilities. This is how it works. Detective Martinez was getting a clearer picture of the marriage. Fahad was a traditionalist who believed his wife should be subservient to him. When Roa began to assert her independence, when she began to embrace American ideas about women's rights, their marriage fell apart. But belief in traditional gender roles didn't make someone a murderer. Detective Martinez needed more evidence. She decided to take a different approach. Fahad, I need to ask you about your phone records. On October 16th, around the time Roa disappeared, you made several phone calls. Can you tell me about those? Fahad looked uncomfortable for the first time. I don't remember all my phone calls. Let me help you remember. At 8:47 p.m., you called a number registered to Omar Sami. Do you know Omar?
Yes.
He is my friend. What did you talk about? I don't remember. Maybe we made plans to meet. Did you meet with Omar that night? Maybe. I don't remember. This was the first time Fahad had seemed uncertain about anything. Detective Martinez made a note. She needed to find Omar Sami. Meanwhile, the search for Roa continued. Her car was still missing. Her credit cards hadn't been used. Her phone was going straight to voicemail. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. But Detective Martinez had learned something important during her years on the force. People don't just disappear. There's always a trail. There's always evidence. Sometimes you just have to know where to look. The break came when Detective Martinez decided to take another, more careful look at Roa's apartment. During the first search, they had been focused on signs of struggle, on obvious clues. But this time, she was looking for subtler evidence. In the kitchen trash, she found small pieces of metal and ceramic. At first, she thought they might be from a broken dish. But when she examined them more closely, she realized they were from the hookah. The hookah in the living room was indeed broken, just as she had suspected. But it wasn't just broken, it was deliberately destroyed. Someone had smashed it and thrown the pieces away. More importantly, the hose was missing. And Detective Martinez had a theory about what had happened to it. She called Hamza back to the station. Hamza, I need you to think very carefully about the hookah. When you were smoking it with Roa, was it working properly? Yes, perfectly fine. And when you left, was it still intact? As far as I know, yes. So, if someone destroyed the hookah after you left, who would have done that? Hamza's eyes widened as he realized the implications. You think he came into the apartment after I left? I think it's possible. I think Fahad waited until you were gone, then used his key to get into the apartment. What key? He's her ex-husband. He probably still had a key from when they were married. The theory was taking shape. Fahad had been watching the apartment. He had seen Hamza arrive. He had waited in the hallway until Hamza left. Then he had entered the apartment and confronted Roa. But what happened next?
Where was Roa now?
Detective Martinez got her answer when she finally tracked down Omar Sami. On November 19, 2016, Omar was brought to the Lakewood police station for questioning. He was a stocky man in his 30s, with nervous eyes and fidgety hands. I want to help, he said immediately. I'm worried about Roa too. Tell me about October 16th, Detective Martinez said. You received a phone call from Fahad that night. Yes, he called me around 8:30. He said he needed a ride. Where did you pick him up? At his apartment. He seemed upset about something. What did you do? We drove around for a while. He was talking about his ex-wife, about how she was making bad choices. Did you go anywhere specific? We went to a convenience store to buy cigarettes. Then I dropped him off at his apartment. What time was this? Maybe 10 p.m. Detective Martinez checked her notes. According to Fahad, Roa had arrived at his apartment at 11 p.m. But according to Omar, Fahad had been dropped off at his apartment at 10 p.m. After you dropped Fahad off, where did you go? I went to Walmart. I needed to buy some things for my house. What time did you get to Walmart? Around 10:30. Did you go alone? Yes, I went alone. Detective Martinez made a note. She would need to check the Walmart security footage to verify Omar's story. But when she pulled the footage, she got a shock. The security cameras showed Omar's car pulling into the Walmart parking lot at 10:31 p.m. But when the passenger door opened, two people got out, Omar and Fahad. Omar had lied. He and Fahad had gone to Walmart together. Detective Martinez watched the footage more carefully. The two men walked through the store together, heading toward the hardware section. And there, on camera, she watched Fahad pick up a 6-foot digging shovel. They bought the shovel and left the store at 10:47 p.m. Detective Martinez felt her blood run cold. Why would two men need a digging shovel at 10:47 p.m. on the night a woman disappeared? She called Omar back to the station immediately. Omar, I need to ask you again about October 16th. And this time, I need you to tell me the truth. I told you the truth. No, you didn't. I have security footage from Walmart. You and Fahad went there together. You bought a shovel. Amamar's face went pale. His hands began to shake, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead despite the cool temperature in the interview room. I can explain, he stammered. Then explain, Detective Martinez said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. And this time, tell me the truth. Omar looked around the room as if searching for an escape route. There wasn't one. The security footage had caught him in a lie, and he knew it. Okay, yes. Fahad was with me at Walmart. But it's not what you think. What is it then? He said he needed the shovel for his garden. He's been working on landscaping his backyard. He asked me to help him buy it because he didn't have his car that night. Detective Martinez studied Amamar's face. He was still lying, but now there was panic in his eyes. Real fear. Omar, a woman is missing. Her 4-year-old son is with her ex-husband who has a history of stalking and control. You were the last person to see the suspect before she disappeared, and you helped him buy a digging shovel. Do you understand how this looks? I swear to you, I don't know what happened to Roa. I was just helping a friend. What happened after you left Walmart? I dropped him off at his apartment. That's it. I went home. What time? Around 11:30. But Detective Martinez had more questions. She pulled out the phone records that had been bothering her since the beginning of the investigation. Omar, I need to ask you about your phone activity that night. Between 11:45 p.m. and 12:30 a.m., you made 7 phone calls to Fahad. Why? Amamar's face went completely white. I don't remember. 7 calls, Omar. In 45 minutes.
What were you talking about?
Maybe he was having problems with his garden tools. Maybe he needed help. At midnight? With gardening? The lies were getting more desperate, more transparent. Detective Martinez could see that Omar was hiding something big, something that could break this case wide open. I think you know exactly what happened to Roa, she said. I think you were there when it happened. No, Omar shouted, standing up from his chair. I would never hurt anyone. I barely knew her. Then why are you lying to me? Omar sat back down, put his head in his hands, and began to cry. Real tears, not the fake emotion of a practiced liar. I'm scared, he whispered. I'm scared of what will happen to me if I tell the truth. What will happen to you is that you'll go to prison for the rest of your life if you don't tell the truth. A woman is dead, Omar. A mother is dead. And you helped kill her. She's not dead, Omar shouted. She can't be dead. The room went silent. Detective Martinez felt her heart pounding in her chest. This was the moment. This was the confession she'd been waiting for. What do you mean? She can't be dead? Because she was alive when I left. She was alive when I left them. Left them where? Omar looked up at Detective Martinez, tears streaming down his face. At the construction site. In Parma. She was alive when I left them there. And there it was. The break Detective Martinez had been praying for. Not a full confession, but enough to know that Omar had been present when something happened to Roa. Enough to know that she had been taken somewhere against her will. Tell me what happened, Omar. Tell me everything. What came next was a story that would haunt Detective Martinez for the rest of her career. According to Omar, after they left Walmart, Fahad had directed him to drive to Roa's apartment building. Not to go inside, but to wait in the parking lot. He said he just wanted to talk to her. Omar said. He said he wanted to convince her to come back home. How long did you wait? Maybe 30 minutes. Then he came out, and he wasn't alone. Roa was with him? Yes, but something was wrong. She looked scared. Really scared. And she was holding something over her mouth. What kind of something? Like a towel or a cloth. She was holding it over her mouth and nose. Detective Martinez felt sick. This sounded like chemical restraint, like someone had used chloroform or another substance to subdue Roa. What happened next? Fahad put her in the back seat of my car. She was unconscious. Or nearly unconscious. She wasn't moving much. And you just let this happen? I was scared. Fahad was angry, angrier than I'd ever seen him. He said she was his wife, that she belonged to him. He said he was taking her home. But you didn't go to his home, did you?
No.
He told me to drive to a construction site in Parma. There's a big development being built there, lots of empty lots. What happened at the construction site? Fahad took her out of the car. She was starting to wake up, starting to fight. He had to hold her down. Did you help him? No. I stayed in the car. I told him I wanted to leave, that this was wrong. But he said if I left, he would tell the police that I kidnapped her. So you stayed. I stayed. God help me, I stayed. Detective Martinez was taking notes as fast as she could. This was the most detailed account of Roa's final hours that they had gotten from anyone. How long were you at the construction site? Maybe 2 hours. Fahad kept talking to her, trying to convince her to come back to him. But she kept saying no. She kept saying she would never come back. What did Fahad do? He got angrier and angrier. He started yelling at her, calling her names. He said she was a whore, that she had dishonored him, that she deserved to be punished. Did he hurt her? Almomar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. He had the hookah hose, the one from her apartment. He wrapped it around her neck. Detective Martinez felt the room spinning. This was it. This was the confession she needed. He strangled her with the hookah hose? I don't know. I looked away. I couldn't watch. But you heard what happened? She stopped making noise. She stopped fighting. And then what happened? Fahad told me to help him dig a hole. That's what the shovel was for. We buried her there in the construction site. Detective Martinez could barely contain her emotion. After weeks of investigation, after countless interviews and false leads, she finally had the truth about what happened to Roa Aldanoon. But she also had another problem. Where was Roa's son? Almomar, where's the child? Where is Roa's little boy? He's with Fahad. He's been with Fahad this whole time. Was he at the construction site that night? Yes, Almomar said, and Detective Martinez felt her heart break. He was in the car the whole time. He saw everything. A 4-year-old boy had watched his father murder his mother. The horror of it was almost too much to bear. We need to find that construction site, Detective Martinez said. You're going to show us exactly where you buried her. I can't go back there. You don't have a choice, Almomar. You're going to help us find Roa, or you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison for murder. The next morning, November 20th, 2016, Detective Martinez led a convoy of police vehicles to the construction site in Parma. Almomar sat in the back of her car, handcuffed, directing them to the exact location where they had buried Roa's body. The construction site was massive, dozens of acres of partially built homes and empty lots. Without Almomar's guidance, they never would have found her. There, Almomar said, pointing to a spot behind a half-built house. She's buried behind that foundation. Detective Martinez called for the excavation team. Within hours, they had confirmed what Almomar had told them. 6 feet underground, wrapped in a blue tarp, they found the body of Roa Aldanoon. She had been strangled with a hookah hose, just as Almomar had described. The autopsy would later reveal that she had also been beaten before she died, that she had fought for her life until the very end. But Detective Martinez's work wasn't finished. She still had to arrest Fahad Mohammed Sahid for murder. And she still had to rescue a 4-year-old boy who had witnessed his mother's death. The arrest came 2 days later. Fahad was at work, operating his forklift, when Detective Martinez and 6 other officers surrounded him. Fahad Mohammed Sahid, you are under arrest for the murder of Roa Aldanoon. This time, Fahad's reaction was different. This time, there was panic in his eyes. I didn't kill anyone, he said. I don't know what you're talking about. We found her body, Fahad. We found where you buried her. Your friend Almomar told us everything. Almomar is lying. He's trying to save himself. We have physical evidence. We have witnesses. We have your phone records. It's over. As they led Fahad away in handcuffs, Detective Martinez couldn't help but think about the little boy who was about to lose the only parent he had left. Fahad would go to prison for the rest of his life, but what would happen to the child who had witnessed his mother's murder? The case of Roa Aldanoun was solved, but the impact of her death would ripple through the community for years to come. A young mother had fled war only to be killed by the man she had once loved. A child had watched his father murder his mother. And two men had thought they could cover up their crime with lies and silence. But Detective Martinez had learned something important during her investigation. The truth always comes out eventually. No matter how carefully you plan, no matter how many lies you tell, the truth has a way of surfacing. In this case, it had taken a friend's betrayal and a security camera to reveal what really happened on that October night. But it had been enough. Justice for Roa was finally within reach. If you're finding this case as disturbing and heartbreaking as I am, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Stories like Roa's need to be told, and your support helps us continue to bring attention to victims who might otherwise be forgotten. Because every victim deserves justice, and every story deserves to be heard. But the story of Roa Aldanoun wasn't over yet. There were still more secrets to uncover, more lies to expose, and more justice to be served. The real story of what happened that night was even more horrific than anyone had imagined. November 22, 2016. Cuyahoga County Jail. Both Fahad Muhammad Sahid and Omar Sami sat in separate cells, each charged with murder in the first degree. Detective Martinez had built what she thought was a solid case, but she knew that prosecutors would want more evidence, more details, more confirmation of the timeline that had led to Roa's death. The problem was that both men were now lawyering up, refusing to talk without their attorneys present. The cooperative Omar who had led them to the burial site was gone, replaced by a man who realized he was facing life in prison for his role in the murder. But Detective Martinez had learned something important during her 20 years in law enforcement. Criminals, especially amateur criminals, couldn't keep their mouths shut. Eventually, one of them would say something that would give her the evidence she needed to ensure convictions. She decided to focus her attention on Omar. He was the weaker of the two, the one who had shown genuine remorse during his confession. He was also the one who had the most to lose if he didn't cooperate. "I want to talk to you about a plea deal," Detective Martinez said during their next meeting. Omar looked up from his hands. He hadn't been sleeping well in jail, and it showed. His eyes were red and puffy, his face gaunt. "What kind of plea deal?" "The prosecutor is willing to consider reducing your charges if you testify against Fahad. You could be looking at manslaughter instead of murder one." "What's the difference?" "About 30 years. Omar was quiet for a long moment. Detective Martinez could see him weighing his options, trying to decide whether betraying his friend was worth the possibility of eventually getting out of prison. "I need to think about it," he said finally. "Don't think too long," Detective Martinez warned. "This offer won't be on the table forever." While Omar considered his options, Detective Martinez continued building her case. She had the body, she had the confession, she had the physical evidence. But she wanted more. She wanted to understand exactly what had happened that night, step by step. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. On November 28, 2016, Detective Martinez received a phone call that would change everything. "Detective Martinez? This is Jennifer Walsh from the Cuyahoga County Jail. I have an inmate here who says he has information about one of your cases." "Which case?" "The Roa Aldanoun murder." Detective Martinez felt her pulse quicken. "What kind of information?" "He says he was cellmates with one of your suspects. Says the guy confessed to him about what really happened that night." This was exactly what Detective Martinez had been hoping for. Jailhouse confessions were golden in murder cases, especially when the defendant had been refusing to cooperate with investigators. "I'll be right there." An hour later, Detective Martinez sat across from Marcus Thompson, a career criminal serving time for armed robbery. He was the kind of guy who made deals with prosecutors in exchange for information, but he was also the kind of guy whose information was usually reliable. "Tell me about your cellmate," Detective Martinez said. "Fahad? That dude's been talking nonstop since he got here. Keeps going on and on about how his wife betrayed him, how she deserved what happened to her." "What exactly did he say?" He said he caught her with another man. Said she was acting like a whore, dishonoring him and his family. He said he had to punish her. Did he talk about the night she died? Yeah, man. He talked about it constantly. Said he went to her apartment after the other guy left. Said he used his key to get in. This matched what Detective Martinez had suspected. Fahad had kept a key to Roa's apartment and had used it to gain entry after Hamza left. What happened after he got inside? He said she was cleaning up, putting away the hookah stuff. He confronted her about the other man, about how she was acting. She told him to leave, that she was going to call the police. How did he react? He got angry. Really angry. He said she had no right to call the police on her own husband. He said he grabbed the hookah hose and wrapped it around her neck to scare her. To scare her? That's what he said. He said he just wanted to show her who was in control. But she kept fighting, kept trying to get away. Detective Martinez was taking notes furiously. This was the most detailed account of the actual murder that they had gotten from anyone. What happened next? He said she passed out. He thought she was just unconscious, but when he checked her pulse, she was dead. So, he's claiming it was an accident. Yeah, that's what he keeps saying. That he didn't mean to kill her, that he just wanted to teach her a lesson. Detective Martinez had heard this defense before. The "I didn't mean to kill her" excuse was common in domestic violence cases, especially when the weapon was something other than a gun or knife. Did he say anything about disposing of the body? Oh yeah. He said he panicked. He called his friend Omar and told him he needed help. He said they wrapped her body in a tarp and put her in Amar's car. What about the child? Did he mention Roa's son? Marcus's expression darkened. Yeah, he talked about the kid. Said the kid was sleeping in his bedroom when it happened. Said he had to wake him up and tell him that mommy was sick, that she had to go to the doctor. Detective Martinez felt sick. The child was there when it happened?
Yeah.
And get this, Fahad said he told the kid that mommy was going on a trip, that she would be back soon. The kid kept asking when mommy was coming home. This was even worse than Detective Martinez had imagined. Not only had Fahad murdered his ex-wife, but he had traumatized his own child in the process. Did he say anything else? He said he was worried about the kid talking to people, about him telling someone what he saw. He said he had to keep the kid quiet.
How?
He said he told the kid that if he talked about mommy, bad things would happen to him. He said he scared the kid into staying quiet.